Now, the reason I spun out the company is that after so much success with the website, we started to have major industries come and say, how can we connect consumers with the source of our products? And this is the case of an Office Depot product, recycled paper, where they want to connect people to the source. It's 100% recycled. Scanning the barcode in the spring on a ream of paper, you'll get traceability all the way to the source from where you're standing in the store. We can geolocate the consumer, powered by the website. The model of the supply chain is there, and for very, very little cost, we can trace that product all the way to its source. In this case, the choice is easy between a recycled paper and a virgin paper, because the recycled paper ends up in a dump outside of Chicago, and the virgin paper ends up in a forest in Canada, and there's really no comparison. So you can start to connect people to the source of products as a way to favor one product versus another. Now, other industries have come and said, well, if this platform is open, maybe it's an incentive for my suppliers to be more transparent about what they're selling to me. And so we're doing a project with Airbus maker, EADS in France, who is trying to decide which biofuels they should invest in for the future of air travel. And so we've added a layer of functionality where we can crowdsource all of the biofuels in the world. And through a questionnaire, all of the different suppliers can fill out how they make their fuel, what is their carbon footprint and their environmental impact. And the carrot and the stick is the map, because the map becomes public. It's a directory. And if you want to be seen by one of these giant companies or any of them, you'll have an incentive to fill out the questionnaire and appear on the map. Now, one of the things I learned in my thesis was through these studies in the north of Scotland, that if you have a bunch of companies that are willing to share supply chain information between each other, then we can find massive new efficiencies. Now, this was a very small case of 18 breweries in the north of Scotland. They shared their supply chains with us and with the regional government, and we found that they all had a weak point. They were all bottling very far away in England. And for a number of reasons, this was not advantageous. They each had to drive a truck up and down the country to get their beer bottled and then back up. And so working with the government, working with a local brewer, it was easy to decide to build a small bottling plant in the north and reduce everybody's distance to bottling and make them more competitive and create jobs. So these are the kinds of sort of ideal scenarios that I have in mind when we can really start to crowdsource supply chain information and create efficiencies across entire industries. And it's actually the FDA, the Fair Factories Clearinghouse, are adopting similar strategies to try to get different competing industries to disclose supply chain information and make for a more efficient and a quality future. Now, we've extended our platform as a collaborative tool. So this is a version of Sourcemap that we are deploying for the MIT Center for Transportation and Logistics. Every master's student at MIT will graduate in supply chain with the ability to map supply chains. And the reason we used a giant touchscreen is you can get these people around the table, and in a matter of minutes, you can have the people involved in sourcing and the people involved in distribution and retail share knowledge with each other. And for the first time ever, we are finding giant companies can see their entire global supply chain. They can add relevant metrics. So this version of Sourcemap doesn't just count water and carbon footprint, it also counts costs and lead times. And if you drag a factory from one country to another, we reflect that in real time. So you can see, what if I moved production? What would my labor costs be, my time to market, and my carbon footprint? And since nobody's ever seen those metrics in real time next to each other, massive efficiencies are there to be found. So this is where we're really heading now, which is actually taking information out of ERP, the software that is incredibly complicated to use and all the output is in spreadsheets, exporting it, and then visualizing it. And we're finding that people are making decisions very fast and becoming aware of risks. And in fact, this is what the entire business has become, basically interpreting supply chain information so that people can feel comfortable disclosing it. Now, this is an example of the kinds of risk assessment that you can do once you have a good geographic knowledge of your supply chain. Now, this particular site, the red dot, has a very long replacement time. So actually it threatens the entire product line. And now you can see it geographically. You can also then find out how it falls along climate risks. But you can also map it in a completely different way as a network and find out what plants is that part really touching. If it were to be lost, what product lines would be lost? And this is generated automatically. And then all of a sudden, these decision makers, these stakeholders from upstream factories all the way down to retail can make much more informed decisions. Now, once you have a geographic mapping of your supply chain, given what we know today about climate change, and this is just one case of the kinds of things that you can do when you have the right to know where things come from, we can start to zoom in and find the hotspots in a supply chain, not just based on the supply chain, but based on very real risk. Now, this is a particular part of the world that's very dear to me. Who here likes chocolate? Okay, good. So, the green areas in the map, this is Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire. The green areas are producing between 50 and 80% of the world's cocoa or cacao today. Okay. Now, we don't know because if you're holding, so another exercise, when you're holding that bar of chocolate, try and tell me where you think the cacao comes from. It's very hard to know. Well, in 2050, this is what happens. The green areas shrink dramatically. Over 90% of them become too hot to grow cacao the way it's being grown today without shade. Let me do that again. This is chocolate today. This is chocolate in 2050. Now, without knowing where your bar of chocolate comes from, there's no way to prevent this kind of unsustainable practices. If I want you to take anything away today, it's this, it's that. No, it's not. We have a lot of other problems than cocoa. This is the lesson. The right to know is the right to survive. Okay, when it comes to the environment, when it comes to social risks, if you don't have transparency, there's no way to make informed decisions that avoid catastrophic outcomes. So transparency in this case is not, something that's nice to have. It's really a necessity to survive as an individual, to survive as an industry, and ultimately as a society. And so this is what Sourcemap hopes to empower, with the right to know at every level the impact of the choices we make. And so I urge you to join us and help us show you what your supply chain looks like, help us connect consumers and other stakeholders with the impact of products, and I'll be more than happy to talk and to demo more at the reception following.
Thank you, Leo. で、今の話にあったように、後でデモンストレーションもリセプションでありますし、あとこういうような会社実はたくさんメディアラボから出ていて、でさっきのそのメディアラボネットワークとプラットフォームの話でいうと、やっぱり皆さんもそうですし、こういう卒業生ももう少しメディアラボのコミュニティの中に入れて、もう少しインタラクションを増やしていきたいなというふうに思っていますので、ぜひよろしくお願いします。